a lot of news happened since we last convened. Actually, going to start with a listener question, which was about Nintendo NX, and they wanted to know if we thought that there was a particular price point that it had to come in at if it was going to be competitive. And Alex and I were actually talking about this before the podcast began, and we actually thought that, it's not so much about price, it's about kind of everything else that goes with it, right?
Features and games. I think looking at it at like the price point is kind of coming at the question kind of sideways. I think, it's about like, obviously they need to launch with a big game to get this thing going, like a Zelda or Mario or something like that. But, a lot of the rumors or theories are that maybe this is going to be something that's going to combine both portable and, home console.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to say. Did you actually, you didn't read the question itself, did you?
I didn't read it out loud, no.
Just because, he specifically, the NX is a long ways off, but how cheap do you think it needs to be in order to compete? Many people thought the Wii U was expensive. And, like, my response is that we don't know anything about it. Like, it's really hard to judge. Like, we don't know its specs. We don't know sort of what its key sort of Nintendo crazy feature is going to be.
Yeah, I think behind that question is the assumption that it's going to be not competitive hardware-wise with the existing consoles.
Yeah.
And
Which is the trend that they've been... that's basically their approach since, 2005, 2006? So
Since GameCube, I guess, basically, right?
Yeah, even GameCube was kind of starting to show, like...
yeah, GameCube was the first one, right, that kind of took this approach.
It's always been that way.
Yeah.
Well, GameCube was
Nintendo
roughly
64
on
was
par with
competitive.
PS2, maybe a little bit stronger, but not as strong as Xbox.
So.
I mean, it was sure. The Sega Genesis was arguably a little bit more powerful than the SNES, and so all the way back then. But it didn't really become a thing. Nintendo didn't really stop competing on pure horsepower until the Wii.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's when they sort of gave up.
But Nintendo's been talking in that investor call. They said that they have looked at Apple and they like how they have the same software iOS on both the iPad and the iPhone.
Yeah,
right.
And they like how they have $56 billion in the bank.
Yes, they like all that money. They like all that install base.
That is a pretty nice thing. They should
though?
emulate that.
No, this was a question that came up on GameScoop yesterday about could Apple buy Nintendo, and the answer is obviously no. But it does sort of, like, when you think about it just from like a fun hypothetical standpoint, there's interesting parallels between the two companies because they marry hardware and software in a way that almost no one else does. Like that's like Apple's shtick, is that it's all integrated, the hardware and software perfectly in sync with one another, in a way that they're, really not in, Windows or Android or anywhere else. Right. And Nintendo's the same way in video games. Like they're the ones that they'll basically design a controller around how they want that Mario game to control. Like they'll design, and they're really the only people with the Wii controller now the Wii U gamepad that are really sort of figuring out how to take full advantage of that hardware and software. So that's kind of unique. That's why it's really hard to say with the NX. It's like, well, in the absence of any kind of fact, it's like, well, how are we supposed to even speculate?
Yeah, it's still weird to me that they slipped in the announcement of a new console it's kind of like a passing by.
I don't think so.
I feel like with how they did it kind of implies that it's probably not going to be anything super like amazing standalone, like boom, here's that new console that everyone's been hoping for, but we never really delivered on previously.
I think it's the opposite. I think they announced they were making mobile games, and then they also wanted to announce, hey, we're making our next console for the core games market as well, to assuage the concerns of people that are said, oh, Nintendo is making mobile games and free-to-play games, and it's the end of Nintendo, and everybody freaking out. So they said, look, we're also working on our next console that's gonna appeal to everybody that's already a Nintendo fan. I think that's absolutely why they lumped those two announcements together.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I guess that strategy makes sense, but just nobody was talking about the NX.
But the whole
conversation was about mobile games.
It's also stating the obvious. It's like the PlayStation 5 is being planned, and so is the Xbox 2 or whatever that console is going to be.
Sure, but you're not going to get them to talk about it
until
they're ready to make a big deal about it.
So Nintendo is just sort of stating, it doesn't cost them anything to say, we're thinking about the successor to the Wii U and beginning work on it.
Yeah, they're making sure people know that we're not done with the console market. We're just expanding our business in another way.
I don't know. I disagree that it doesn't cost them anything. I think it costs them the reveal. It costs them the pent up
anticipation.
I think they're making more anticipation this way.
You think so? Because I actually think I would have been much more interested in it if it had been its own separate thing. Because this feels now like it's two colored by the idea of like whatever they're
That's
going to do
racist.
is going to be you guys in that thread, man. That's going to be, too much influenced by this whole concept of mobile. So, like, I mean, you and I were talking about this again before the podcast, which is we were throwing out ideas that, or you were specifically about the whole idea of like being able to move between like
3DS and
so like
and
portable
this
and
thing.
home. But then if you are talking about a mobile kind of sphere and that's influencing what they're doing next to their console, for me that's an instant turn off. Like I just don't, given the history, that recent history that Nintendo's had with what they've put into their hardware, it's been pretty underpowered.
Yeah.
So I don't see this being a thing where like iPad and iPhone where you have like these latest processors that can still handle like this movement between like different screen sizes.
Yeah.
What was their specific wording with the NX? Did they say our next console? Did they say our next handheld? Did they use the word platform?
They said console.
They said console? Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, because I don't think they're going to be replacing the 3DS too soon. Because I mean, they just released the XL, and I think
The new.
the new 3DS XL, and they have kind of a fine line to walk because they want to tell people we're making this NX so people don't think they're abandoning the console market, but at the same time they can't have a big press conference that's like Nintendo's new console because they don't want to be like we're abandoning the Wii U. They still would like the Wii U to sell. They still want people making games for it. Like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think announcing that they're making their next console. Again, I stand by the fact that it didn't cost them anything or harm them at all because they'll come out and reveal it in a year or two whenever they do. So console announcements have like run the gamut between the Sega Saturn was like it's surprise launched at E3, and I know that's like going a ways back, but that's just like the most extreme example of, hey, here's the Sega Saturn, here's what it costs, and surprise, it's out right now. You can go buy it, and it was intended to be this big dramatic thing, didn't work. But then, like companies like Sony have done the opposite, where the year before the PSP was announced, they said, "Hey, we're making a handheld game console, and see you in 12 months."
Yeah.
And then in 12 months, like here's the PSP, here's how it works, here's how it's all going to function, and so that's the two extremes of how consoles can be revealed.
And neither of them worked.
That's true.
In other words, don't release a console.
That's
with
true.
bad
No,
news.
instead just have like Elijah Wood announce your console
Yeah.
on MTV.
What about NX predictions? Because I have some predictions. Like 100%, there's going to be.
We don't do that on this show.
That's not true. We totally will.
Ignore him. He just wants to be right all
You
the
tripped
time.
me up, man.
So he's the only time.
Tripped
The only
me
time
up.
you hear like a prediction, he wants it to be him.
No, that's
Well,
not true. I was just trolling.
100%, there's going to be like the flagship game is going to be a game that has some kind of interaction with the 3DS XL. Like this year they released Smash Brothers on both Wii and 3DS. I guarantee there's going to be a game that maybe it's not going to be the exact same game on the 3DS as on the Wii U, but it's going to have some kind of relationship. Like you can play it at home and then you can do things. Like maybe with Street
like
Pass or whatever.
Maybe like some kind of Super Smash Brothers situation.
Yeah.
What? Are you trying to steal his prediction?
No, Smash Brothers already does that.
Yeah, I know. I said like
He
Yeah.
said Smash Brothers.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
My mistake.
Listen up, buddy. So yeah, it's gonna be something like that.
But like more, but like a tighter integration between the two.
Yeah,
Sure.
or maybe like a passive element. Like a smaller game that you can play that can earn you like credits or coins or something or XP. For another game that's on the home console.
Yeah, they're always trying to strike a balance between Nintendo and Sony. It always felt strange to me that if you wanted like whatever Major League Baseball, you had to buy it twice on both consoles.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and then they did start doing some cross-buy stuff, but it wasn't like mandatory. And some people would implement cross-buy, some would only implement cross-play. So you had to buy the game twice, but it was the same game, and you could transfer, your progress back and forth. And it was really felt sort of roughshod and haphazard. So for someone to really nail that experience of a holistic mobile and mobile social console experience would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I doubt that every game will have, like true cross-buy, but I know that like this flagship game is going to, and I think they're going to try and start a trend with that on their platform.
It should be the Zelda chicken race.
Exactly.
Raising.
Raise your chickens on your 3DS and then play, fight your chickens
Yeah.
on the NX.
And
Do the
watch them
chickens
all
fight each
chase
other, or you fight the chickens?
Both.
I
You can
think
fight
you
the
would fight
chickens.
the
I don't think you
chickens.
can have
Or
chicken
you face
fight.
them
I'm
off.
almost certain that chicken fighting is illegal.
Well, not
we're
digitally.
describing cockfights right
Yeah.
now, which are very
why-
much like a felony.
That's why they would gang up on you. Like,
That's true.
As they do in games when you whack them one too many times with a sword.
Yep. What if this people are speculating NX implies Nintendo crossover or like cross console sort of thing. What if this thing is just a software platform that exists across both of their consoles or all of their consoles and mobile phones? So
That would be really interesting. Like
be
being
cool.
able to like buy and download a Mario game on like an iPhone or an Android phone, and then still being able to interact or play with people who are using Nintendo hardware. That
Yeah.
would be really interesting.
yeah,
No way that happens.
I would agree with Alex. Just given how
Why not?
because Nintendo
Because
is
there's
a
no-
Japanese
Because
company
Nintendo do.
it's very much just like, nope, this is our platform. I mean, just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
what Justin was talking about earlier with them being so in control of both the software and the hardware.
Yeah,
you
yeah. They
know?
want to design, a Mario that's going to play, with the controller they intended to play with, not with like touchscreen.
They don't get enough credit. There's all kinds of just little things, and it's not even like they're incredible, but just like a second player can play Mario Galaxy and point at the screen and collect the star bits, and just like clever little stuff like that like has this sort of the quote unquote Nintendo magic that like other people are kind of missing. That is my concern. Not that we're going to get too far into these things, but the one thing I would say about their mobile games are I think it's a good idea, excited about it, but that is like the potential downside, right? Is like, well, now they're designing software for not their own hardware for the first time.
Yeah.
So
Well,
you
other
know.
people are designing it, right?
No, they're doing most of it.
Really?
That's a common
In-house?
misconception. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I did not know that.
DNA is also going to be making some like games with Nintendo characters and stuff, but no, Nintendo's going to be doing the
'Cause
brunt of those.
I'm really
software
interested
development.
to see if these are going to feel like true Nintendo games, or if this is going to be the equivalent of like Nintendo Happy Meals. Just like tossing a Mario in the box just for branding.
But I think like if they like what if they did a Nintendo Flappy Bird? Why not? Like it doesn't hurt anything. That's really popular. That's what all the kids are doing anyway. Like that could have been them. Flappy Bird could have been Nintendo if they were a more progressive company.
I mean, they have experience making games that I think would
Flappy
work.
Bird is terrible though.
But yeah, no, but it made like many millions of dollars, and I don't think it is terrible. I mean, it's free, and that's my Flappy Bird rant. Is that everyone that hates on it so much is hating on something that costs you nothing?
Yeah,
And
I
it's
mean,
like,
I don't
well,
wish it to not exist. I'm just like, this is fun because it's it's like
hey, it's the Dark Souls of casual iPhone games.
it's like it's a so
heard
good
that
it's
before.
bad. It's like the Fast and Furious of like iPhone games.
It's the
No,
Fast and
what?
Furious.
Yes,
of
it's
iPhone
like
games?
No, it's
so
like the-
bad that it's good.
It's the Birdman of iPhone games, if anything. It really challenges your mind. You gotta
Slightly
think about-
slightly pretentious, too much drumming. Michael Keaton should have gotten an Oscar for it.
Yeah, exactly.
So Nintendo has experience making games that I think would work pretty well on handheld platforms. I mean, Pokemon's kind of an example, even though they don't necessarily make that themselves. But games like Picross, or even, I don't know if you remember Super Mario 64 on the 3DS came
Yeah.
with a bunch of little mini games.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
they were
actually
great.
awesome.
They were awesome.
Great little mini games.
Loved
Like
them.
that sort of thing.
Yoshi's
I think
Touch
they
and
could do really
Go,
well.
Advance Wars, Fire Emblem,
Yeah.
WarioWare,
Yeah.
Pokemon.
What was Yoshi's Touch and Go?
It's a launch game for the original DS.
Wow, because when you're touch and go, doesn't mean that like you're dying.
Well, I mean, it's a clever play on words.
Yeah. Poor
No, it was
Yoshi.
a game on the DS where Yoshi walked automatically, and then you had to like draw
his
lines
path
over
or
pits
whatever.
and stuff, and like draw to like block off enemies and stuff like that.
Kirby's
Like-
Canvas Curse.
Yep.
Similar.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm not worried about Nintendo not being able to make really cool games on handheld platforms, which maybe is the bigger worry. Is are they gonna butt into the monetization limits of handheld platforms, right?
Yes.
Like they make great software that probably costs them a lot of money to make, and they sell it for $30-$40 a piece. They're not going to be able to do that on iOS or Android.
Yeah, but they'll put a Pokemon on mobile, and then you can pay money every week to increase your chances of catching rare Pokemon.
Maybe.
I don't like
I mean,
that.
not even that. I mean, I
Don't.
think at that point you're going for volume over, initial cost.
Potentially. It's just definitely a different way to monetize than what they're used to.
It is.
They do already do.
And hopefully they don't pull a square where they're just like, yeah, we think this is a $20 game. It's like, no one's going to buy that for $20.
I also want
That's
to point out that there's already free to play, like that microtransaction stuff that everyone sort of claims to hate, but then secretly engages in. Already exists on the 3DS. There's a Pokemon puzzle game that has energy, and then when you run out of energy, you can wait for it to recharge, or you can pay. You can pay money, which is like that's already a thing. So it's like I've seen a lot of complaints about people terrified about what Nintendo's going to do if they're on mobile, and I'm like, well, it's already happening on their own platform.
I mean, I think maybe the terror is if that becomes the new Zelda game. Instead of what you wanted as a Zelda game, you get this thing.
Yeah.
And then it's probably not going to be
Pay money for more hearts for an extra bottle. Oh, goodness gracious.
Would you like
My
a fairy?
God, buying hearts.
You can watch this ad to refill your hearts.
Oh, that would be terrible.
Oh, yeah, maybe that's a good feature.
Oh my God.
like the
11
worst-
Nintendo nightmare scenarios.
Yeah, Nintendo mobile nightmare scenarios.
Yeah, look
That's
for that
a
on
really
the
good
site
idea.
next week, guys. Yeah.
Heard it here first.
I'm expecting that next week.
You can pay money to shut Navi up.
Oh,
God.
I think that would make so much money.
Yeah.
So much money.
What if you could put your own face on Link?
I think that'd be a little terrifying, but I think people would go for it.
I would do it.
All right, so sounds like for now, so many details up in the air. Like, that has to come first before they can even start talking about competing on price. Because for all we know, if this thing's amazing, like, just blows your mind, like, never thought Nintendo would do that, but it's going to be great, then I think price is not really as much of a question anymore.
Right.
I do think, though, it'll be, if it's a full home console, it'll be cheaper than a new PS4.
Well, I think historically they've always gone for that value because of the market they generally aim at.
Yeah, and if they really get into these microtransaction things, I mean, it's probably going to be even cheaper. But hopefully they won't. Hopefully it'll just be for phones.